back in. Today we're going to be discussing some of my favorite early round wide receivers. We got 8 of them on tap for you. We're going to go through the first 4 rounds of the draft and hit on 2 guys per round that we really like here. So without further ado, without wasting any more time, let's get after it. First up, let's talk about Cooper Kupp. Now, I think there's a real argument to be made that he could be the number 1 wide receiver off the board. I will probably concede that it still should be Justin Jefferson, but Cooper Kupp was fantastic last year. In 9 games played, he had 75 catches, 812 receiving yards, and 7 touchdowns. That is some next level type of production. 22.1 fantasy points per game was the most among all wide receivers last year. If you take out that last game that he played in the first those 8 games, because in the 9th game is obviously where he got hurt, he averaged over 25 fantasy points per game last year, which is just absolutely elite level production. His 2.61 yards per out run was 7th most among all wide receivers, and he was also 5th in yards per team pass attempt. The dude was just ultra productive, and there's no more just in this numbers right here. He had 7 or more receptions in 7 of 9 games. He had over 100 receiving yards in 5 of the 9 games, and he was a top 5 fantasy producer. Top 5, not just a wide receiver 1, top 5 in 6 of the 9 games that he played last season. And the situation has not changed. There's still nobody here to take away targets from him. The wide receiver room consists of Van Jefferson, Demarcus Robinson, Ben Skowronek, and 5th round pick Puka Nacua, and you also have Tyler Higbee at tight end. This is the same situation that he was in last season, and I think that now with a healthy Matt Stafford, he's gotten over all of his injury concern stuff. I think Cooper Kupp is in a great spot this year, and he can absolutely break fantasy football again in 2023. So let's keep it moving. Let's talk about CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver 6th or 12th overall. Love CeeDee Lamb this year. He is also in a really good spot. I don't think this offense is going to be as fast paced as it was last year because now Kellen Moore has left to go to the Chargers. Last year, they were a top 5 team in pace of play, which is obviously awesome for fantasy football. Last season, CeeDee Lamb had a 30.1% target per route run rate, which is absolutely elite. His routes from the slot 45% of the time. He was 14th in market share of air yards, 9th in deep targets, 18th in red zone targets. His 17.7 fantasy points per game was 7th most among all wide receivers. He was super efficient last year, 6th in yards per route run, 7th in yards per team pass attempt, and 8th in route win rate last year. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb is a great wide receiver. They did add Brandon Cooks, but they lost Dalton Schultz at tight end. But overall, I think this offense is still going to be really good with Dak Prescott. Obviously, we have to factor in as well that Dak Prescott missed 3 or 4 games last year as well with an injury. So as long as Dak Prescott can stay healthy, it's wheels up for CeeDee Lamb again in 2023. So, I think he's a great pick here at the back end of the first round because I really want to try to come away with an elite wide receiver early in my draft. Because if we're going to see wide receivers pushed up as much as we have, or much as we're seeing right now in ADP, then I definitely think you really want to try to come away. I wouldn't just fade the position and just go all running back early because of the value you're getting. I wouldn't do zero RB either, but I definitely want to try to come away at least get 1 or 2 elite, the elite level, really top 24 wide receivers if I can in my drafts because the way running backs are being pushed down. So let's move on to the round 2 guys. Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver 9 or 15th overall. Again, another elite spot here for him. 32.3% target rate last year was 3rd most among all wide receivers. 46% of the snaps from the slot. Obviously, he plays that kind of power slot wide receiver, just very similar to like Cooper Kupp or even obviously he's not as big, but as CeeDee Lamb is. But 8th in red zone targets last year, 106 receptions, 1,161 receiving yards, 6 touchdowns, and 16.7 fantasy points per game last year. He was 7th in yards per route run. He's also great in yards after the catch. He's 13th in yards after the catch per reception. This is a high volume pass offense. They were 6th in pass attempts. I think once again, they're going to be top 10 in pass attempts again this season. And there's just nobody else here really for target competition. Jameson Williams, who was really kind of a big unknown, obviously somebody that I really loved last year coming out, but he didn't play really at all last year. A handful of snaps at the end of last season. And now this season, he comes in, he's going to miss the first 6 games of suspension. And then you have, past that, you have Josh Reynolds, Marvin Jones, and then he just traded for Denzel Mims. And then they also drafted Sam Laporta. So all of the targets are going to be here for them. He's playing this Cooper Kupp type role. And really the only thing that I really would like to see where Amon-Ra St. Brown can maybe improve a little bit is maybe a little bit more down the field because he's never really been utilized that way. But I think if he can, I think that's just another layer to his game. That's been a lot of talk this offseason that Amon-Ra St. Brown spent a lot of time trying to work a little bit more deep and trying to get a little bit better there. But he is fantastic. He is a route running savant, as a wide receiver, a technician at his craft. So I love Amon-Ra St. Brown. And if you can get him in the round 2, if you do go running back in the first, say you go Bijan or Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler in the first, coming back around in the second, getting Amon-Ra St. Brown as my wide receiver 1. I am thrilled to do that all day, every day. Next up, let's talk about Jalen Waddle. Who is wide receiver 11 or 22nd overall. Obviously, he's the number 2 wide receiver on his team with Tyreek Hill being there. But for most every team in the league, he would be their number 1 wide receiver. I digress. He had a 24% target per route run rate last season, as well as a 12.1 average depth of target, which was 33rd among all wide receivers. But he was 59th in red zone targets last season, even though he still had 8 touchdowns last year, 75 catches, 1,356 receiving yards. Again, ultra efficient, 4th in yards per route run, 8th in yards per team pass attempt, 1st in yards per reception, and yards per target. He was also 10th in total route win rate last season. Now, the biggest question here is going to be Tua. Can he stay healthy? If he can, then that's going to be great news because this offense looked fantastic through the first 8 games last year, and then all the injuries started coming for Tua. But Jalen Waddle, I think, is in a great spot again. There's nobody else behind him. It's going to be a very consolidated target share between him and Tyreek. So love Jalen Waddle. Again, back half of the first round or back half of the second round, great value there for somebody like that I think can easily finish again as a wide receiver 1 in 2023. Next up, let's go to the round 3. We're going to go to the Slim Reaper, Devonta Smith, wide receiver 12 or 25th overall. He has a 27% target share last season, 95 catches, 1,200 receiving yards, and 7 touchdowns. He was a 15th in fantasy points per game last year. Super reliable option as well. Was a top 24 wide receiver in 10 of the 17 games played last year, which is something we want to see. You have some of these guys who have these monster boom weeks where they score 30, 35, but then they have these weeks where they give you 5 or 6. Devonta Smith is just very steady, giving you very steady fantasy production. So I do think there's a chance this offense could be a little bit more pass heavy this year. You have to expect that they're going to want to kind of take some of this running a little bit away, lower it a little bit for Jalen Hurts because you really want to keep him healthy. Because obviously, if something were to happen to him, this offense is going to fall apart. But Devonta Smith is a great option. Number 2 wide receiver here, obviously AJ Brown, Dallas Goedert, but there's really nothing past them. So the target competition is between those 3 players. But Devonta Smith is a very solid wide receiver 2. In my opinion, somebody that has a very high wide receiver 2 ceiling, could finish as a low end wide receiver 1, but I don't think he has that elite, that elite ceiling as you might want, like a top 5 wide receiver, unless something happened to like AJ Brown or something like that. So let's keep it moving. Let's move over to Chris Olave. Second year, his rookie year was fantastic last year. Had 26.7% target share, averaged almost 8 targets per game last year. 3rd in market share of air yards. 72 catches, almost 1,100 receiving yards, and 4 touchdowns, averaged 13.5 fantasy points per game. Dude was a baller, though. 10th in yards per route run, 9th in yards per team pass tip, and 12th in route win rate as a rookie last season. Now, I will say they added Derek Carr. Honestly, people are underselling Andy Dalton last year. Like, Andy Dalton wasn't bad. Like, he wasn't great, but he wasn't bad last year. But you know what? Derek Carr has never really been great. Derek Carr, I don't get like some of the NFL media that tries to hype up Derek Carr. He's never really been very good. He's always been kind of average. And last season, he was average. 3,500 passing yards, 24 touchdowns for him. He was 28th in deep ball completion percentage last season and 27th in red zone completion percentage last year. But, I don't think it's really a downgrade, but it's also not an upgrade for Chris Olave. Now, the pass catchers here, you have Juwan Johnson, who I like as like a later round tight end option. But Michael Thomas is supposed to be back. But does anybody believe that Michael Thomas is ever going to stay healthy? Like, I'm not one of those people that try to push like injury narratives for players, but like he has just not been healthy for years to this point. So Chris Olave is certainly, even with Michael Thomas healthy, Chris Olave is still the main dude. Like, he is the alpha in this offense. He's the wide receiver 1. Michael Thomas would be the number 2. But you also have like Alvin Kamara, whose suspension could be looming. So I think there's plenty of I think there's plenty of targets to go for Chris Olave here this year, and I think he is a awesome bet as a wide receiver 2 this year, probably a high-end wide receiver 2 this season in this offense with Derek Carr. So let's keep it moving. Let's move over to round 4 and talk about Amari Cooper, wide receiver 18 or 38th overall. 26% target share, 7th in market share of air yards, 12th in deep targets, 12th in red zone targets last year, 15th in yards per route run, 13th in yards per team pass attempt. They traded for Elijah Moore this season. They drafted Cedric Tillman. But I think this offense could be like a top 10 pass offense this year. I think Deshaun Watson takes that step forward, that bounce back season. Deshaun Watson's going to have this entire offseason to really kind of get things together. It was a very bad situation for him last year. I think Amari Cooper is in a great spot. I think this pass offense is going to be way better with Sean Watson this year, one of the best offensive lines in the league. There's a lot to like here with this offense. And Amari Cooper, while he's not a sexy option, is always reliable. Somebody that can just kind of give you that reliable fantasy production that you're looking for. You can draft him as your wide receiver 2 or your wide receiver 3, depending on how your build goes. But I love getting my hands on Amari Cooper in an offense that I think is going to be being undervalued and one we should be looking to target. So let's keep it moving here. And lastly, we're going to hit on DJ Moore. Speaking of offenses especially pass offenses that are being slept on, wide receiver 21 or 48th overall. Now, DJ Moore is no stranger to really bad quarterback play, right? He's been dealing with his entire career. If you look at it, Moore has accomplished so much in his career, despite the fact that the quarterbacks he's played with combining for a 55.8 PFF passing grade over the past 5 seasons. That is the second lowest team mark in the NFL. He has caught touchdown passes from 6 quarterbacks in his career. 2 are free agents, and 2 of them are clear backups, leaving Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield as the best 2 quarterbacks. And we're using that term very loosely there as well. So, and both of those dudes are fighting for starting jobs in 2023. But I mean, if you look at DJ Moore from 2009 to 2021, he averaged about 1,200 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns per season. His receptions and receiving yards obviously declined last season, but he still posted a career high with 7 touchdowns. Moore has been a top 25 fantasy producer each of the past 4 seasons, and he has excelled at making plays and making players miss, avoiding 0.8 tackles per game in his career. That's the 11th best rate of wide receivers in over the past 5 seasons. So there's a lot to like with DJ Moore. He's a big play guy with 27% of his receptions gaining at least 20 yards last season, which ranked 5th out of 73 wide receivers last season. And that's one of the big things that Justin Fields really worked on was his accuracy and his deep ball accuracy this year. That's something he's been working on all offseason. But I think this offense as a whole is going to be better. They invested in the offensive line finally. They brought in Nate Davis to solidify that right guard spot. They drafted Darnell Wright in the first round. Like, this offensive line could actually be like a top 15 offensive line this season. And I think we see Justin Fields kind of take that next step, kind of like what we've seen from guys like Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen. Once they added, elite playmakers around them, and DJ Moore is that. Like, DJ Moore is a top 15 wide receiver in the NFL in my books. I know some other people may disagree with that and say, no way. I think that he is. He's always played with just horrendous quarterbacks, and he has produced despite them. So I think DJ Moore could end up being a steal, somebody that could finish as a wide receiver 1 this year. Like, I think he has that sort of ceiling. And if you look at the target competition behind him, it's Darnell Mooney, who I really like as a late round guy. And then it's Cole Kmet, and it's Chase Claypool, I really wouldn't be shocked if he's out of the league the next year or 2. Like, I wouldn't be surprised even if they cut him. Like, I don't think that's going to happen because of the lack of depth behind them. But Chase Claypool just does not seem like he's all that interested in the game of football. So overall, DJ Moore is in a fantastic spot. He's the alpha in this offense. This offense is going to take a big step forward this year. So I am perfectly okay with taking a shot on him as a late 4th, early 5th round wide receiver who has a ton of upside here in this offense. So let me know in the comment section below, who are some players you think that maybe I missed on? What are your thoughts on the guys we did talk about? Let me know in the comments. Hit that like and subscribe button. We'll see you on the next one.